Firstly, can I have apologies for absence?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Councillor Richard Beamer and Colin
So the next is the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 6. Are we happy that they're a good record? Sign those. Okay, next, disclosure of members' interests. Anything to disclose? No? Right, we'll do 4 kind of cabinet decisions. That's just to note.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Anything to add? Okay, I'm going to move the agenda around a bit now, and I'm going to go straight to item 8. That's Wojciech.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to introduce this presentation, please.
Yes, so thank you all. Welcome. We've got a short presentation which Sarah will present to you in a moment. I will just provide a brief summary of what happened in the last year. Last year, we've done the same presentation with our previous head of the service, with Janice Rose. Nothing changed a lot. We still face some inflationary pressures, but these are not as high as the last year. We've got some new funding. We are facing actually unprecedented funding levels for regeneration in the county. We still face some problems in terms of the delivery, in terms of the time delivery. So we are looking to employ a few additional heads to the service to help us with delivery. Some of them are time constrained and needs to be delivered in a time frame. But we don't plan to drop out any of these projects from the program. We've actually got a few more in the last year, and Sarah will speak about that in a few seconds, actually. Sarah, to you.
Thanks, Councillor. Morning, everybody. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Got the law as a result. So this is, as Wojciech said, this is an update on the presentation we received last year. So what I'll do is go through the set of slides, which much of which you'll see in the structure you'll have seen last year because the role of the team hasn't changed, but I'll be able to give you an update on where the progress and some of the key programmes that we've got. So I won't dwell on this, but as you know, the role of the service is really critical in terms of supporting the council's corporate plan and those 3 key priorities. So clearly growth is the focus of what we do. But actually, a lot of what we do as well supports the tackling inequalities as well, and how we do it and where we do it is really important in tackling inequalities as well. And then we do that with value for money as well, because actually a lot of the activity we do levers in additional funding into the county. So we make the case for external funding that meets our growth and regeneration needs. And importantly, influence regional policy programmes and investments that support the county's ambitions. We manage that the development and implementation of that programme, and then we'll come on to some of those in the next slides. And importantly, and I think Janice must have mentioned this last year, but it's a really important part of the services, that accountable body role that we perform on behalf of the whole council in terms of that externally funded projects, which allows us again to be a trusted partner in terms of delivering significant levels of external funding. So I'll go through the slides in more detail, but broadly we'll cover those areas, which is, again, the broad areas of economic development and growth within the county council. So in terms of town and community regeneration, so this slide may have looked slightly similar to this last year, but actually that covers a whole host of work that's gone in the past year to move these programmes forward. So as members will know, Energise and Blythe programme is a significant regeneration investment into Blythe, £90 million. That has changed since last year, so we've got we had an additional £20 million to add into that programme as a result of a levelling of deep dive with the department. And the projects that are as part of that programme, there's 11 projects. The first phase of those are not only underway but under construction. So those of you who might have walked around live down by the quayside, you can see the Energy Central Learning Hub is now underway and kind of coming out of the ground now. Similarly, in the Market Square in Blythe, the work on the Culture Hub is now underway as well. So that is going really successfully. It's kind of hard, I think, to emphasise enough the amount of work that's gone into that programme in such a short space of time. The additional resource that Wojciech mentioned is to ensure that we've got enough capacity to deliver that programme, because that and a few others are time bound in terms of when the funding needs to be used. So that's a really key priority for us, and we're focusing resource on that. On Ashington Investment Plan, again, this is significant progress on this since the last time you received an update. We had at the time, I believe, funding from North of Tyne Combined Authority to the High Street Innovation Programme in Ashington. The desire in the town was always to do something as similar as we could to Blythe and have that comprehensive regeneration programme. We didn't receive funding through the Levelling Up Fund bid, as members will know, but then subsequently to that, and since you last received an update, we did receive funding from government through a subsequent process. And so 17 to 18 million pounds from government is now part of that comprehensive regeneration programme for the town. That's currently, the detail of that is currently in development. Cabinet accepted that programme into the capital programme earlier in the summer, and the different strands of activity of that programme are now in development, working through the town board. The Borderlands Place programme, many of you will have been involved, I think, in the development of various town plans that are being taken forward as part of this programme. So as members will know, we are part of the Borderlands Place programme with our colleagues to the west and north of the border, investment from UK and Scottish governments as part of that. One of the programmes within that is the development of place plans, and we've identified phase 1 place plans, and they've been under development in the past year or so in Alnwick, Bedlington and Newbiggin. They will be coming forward in the next few months, actually, those first drafts of the place plan. So those of you who are on those place plan groups within those towns will see those in the next few weeks. And then we'll get a start on the next phase of those place plans, which are Bellingham, Hawkesville, Prudhoe and Rothbury. The idea of those place plans is that working with communities, with members, county councillors and town councillors, with community groups, with businesses in those towns, we develop the town plan, and there should be some investment that follows through from Borderlands, but also there will be projects that can then start to lever in other funding. The idea is that there will be a plan for the town that then supports funding from elsewhere as well. So it really sets out what towns want to see, what projects are coming forward within those towns. And then finally on this slide, the Hexham High Street Heritage Action Zones. This is one of the projects that we've been delivering rather with Historic England and funding through them, recognising the heritage as sort of heritage-led regeneration within the town. That's well underway now, and is being, I mean, if you go to the town, you will see that activity that's underway there, and that's due to be finished by spring next year. Just continuing town and community regeneration. One of the functions that the service performs, which you'll be aware of, is that relationship with town and parish councils, and also the process for community chest, and those sort of community projects that we know are really valuable to members coming forward annually through the process for calls. The team also manage any right to bid in community asset transfer, work with colleagues across the organisation, so that would come through the service. And then we also provide external funding, advice to projects. There's a regeneration update that if you or colleagues are not receiving that, you can do. That's a really helpful suppose, list of available resources that community groups and others might be able to bid into. Culture-led regeneration and investments. There's a number of investments that are going on across the county which are really culture-led. The Maltings and the Barracks complex in Berwick is one of those that's getting underway. The Maltings is a Borderlands funded project to build a new theatre there. Ardgefferin Distillery and Visitor Centre in Wooler is now open, again received Borderlands funding. That was, Ardgefferin was, if not the first, it was one of the first of the Borderlands projects to be completed. And we had all of the leaders from the Borderlands councils at Ardgefferin a couple of weeks ago, and they were really impressed with to see the investment that the Borderlands programme had been able to make into the distillery and visitor centre. The Lidorian Annex, again, progress since the last meeting, as you all know, that's now opened, and as we understand, had a very successful summer as a new visitor attraction in Annex Gardens. And then the Blythe Culture Hub, which is part of that Energising Blythe programme, but is an element of that programme which is very much drawing on culture to regenerate the town centre. So how people use the town centre, where they want to spend their time, things that they want to do when they're there. We'll build the space, but we also have to have a programme around that so we can animate that space and people are coming into the town centre and using it in a different way. Hadrian's Wall investment programme, that is an investment programme which is looking at different projects along the wall so we can maximise the asset that we have in the county. And that was recognised as well in the independent review of culture investment portfolio, that penultimate bullet point there. And we've now added that into the cultural investment programme, recognising that as World Heritage status, it's a really important asset for the county, and we need to be investing in that and maximising the role that can play in terms of visitors and residents as well, and how they interact with the wall. Destination Tweed is, again, Borderlands will support that long distance recreational route along the Tweed, drawing on, again, the history and the heritage of the town, but also some of the culture that is sort of embedded within that heritage of the town. And the Culture and Creative Zone, again, in Berwick, this is North of Tyne funded project, a pilot really for the North East to see how investing in culture and creative businesses and freelancers in a town where there's already a strength of those businesses and assets there, how that can further develop and contribute to the economy of the town and grow that. So that is underway now. On rural stewardship and growth, we have agreed a rural stewardship and growth investment plan with North of Tyne. Associated with that was around £9 million worth of funding to support growth within the county. The main projects coming through to deliver that then are the Northumberland Small Business Service, which will be going live in the next few weeks. That really is a business support service that recognises the needs of small and micro businesses across the county, and there's an additional capital grant scheme, capital grant element of that for businesses in rural areas to be able to draw down, where that supports their growth plans. There's also an enterprise support offer within that, which is eligible across the county. Advance Northumberland will be delivering that on behalf of the council. The second key project to deliver the rural stewardship and growth is the Rural Asset Multiplier pilot. Again, this is a pilot which is really testing local-led regeneration programmes, but specifically focused in areas where we want to maximise the assets that we've got there for economic gain. And so it's particularly focusing in the national park and also the coastal area of outstanding natural beauty, recognising that there are opportunities there, but also pressures as well. We know that some of the pressures around the area of outstanding natural beauty in the summer faces pressures. So what can we be doing to support those areas and can do things differently? Integrated land management at the countryside. So members will be aware of the Great Northumberland Forest, which continues to be delivered by the council working with DEFRA. And we will also have local nature recovery strategies as well, which is a national policy, but Northumberland is one of those pilot areas. So we'll be building on that to take forward the nature recovery strategy in the next year. The last point there refers to the transition to the new North East Combined Authority. So the leader of the council has a transition portfolio as we develop the new Combined Authority on rural and environment. And that will very much build on the rural exemplar that we've developed as part of the North of Tyne Combined Authority, and take that forward into the new Combined Authority, working with our colleagues, particularly in Durham and Gateshead on rural, but also right across the board when it comes to some of those environmental areas that we might want to work on together as a 7, where that adds value to what each local authority is doing. On the growth side, we continue to deliver employment partnerships across the county, and that's really partnership bringing together the voluntary and community sector and supporting residents that are furthest from the labour market back into employment, working with DWP and the employability support programmes again, so that can be tailored to what businesses are asking for and what the needs of our residents are. As part of that, we have secured UK Shared Prosperity funding to deliver a inclusive growth community partnership, and that's focused in our most deprived areas of the county, and that will offer small grants to voluntary and community sector organisations where they are supporting residents with inclusive growth activities such as employment support and supporting them with volunteering, maybe if that's the first step to engage people back into work. We're also working really closely with North of Tyne Combined Authority and colleagues around the health sector on the work and health strategy. We know that the health of individuals is a really important factor in our economy, and ill health makes an impact on our economy as much as it does for the individual as well. So working with our colleagues, there's a piece on a work and health strategy. What can we be doing better to support people who suffer from ill health back into work, and doing that in a joint way across the sectors. In terms of the visitor economy, again, a highlight since the last time members received an update. The North East was designated as a local visitor economy partner. Visit Northumberland was, so that's a national status. I think there's only 11, or there might be 15 now, of those partnerships across the country. That really is a designation of Visit Northumberland's role in terms of supporting the visitor economy in the county. And we are part of the only pilot nationally to take forward a destination development partnership with our colleagues in Newcastle and Gateshead Initiative and Durham Visit Durham, three LVEPs. And that's really looking at how outside of that branding, so we'll continue to be Visit Northumberland, we'll continue to be, support the county, but behind the scenes, what does the data tell us about where we can be making better investments? What does the data tell us in terms of the market, what people want to see in terms of the visitor economy? And so the Destination Development Partnership is testing what that can look like, and we are part of that, and that might inform then how future arrangements, both in the North East but also nationally, how those arrangements look. I've mentioned a couple of times the new North East Combined Authority, so there's a lot of work going on across the service to work to support the development of the new North East Combined Authority as we work through the process, and making sure that the priorities of the county are factored into the planning. priorities of the new mayoral combined authority. And as we do that, I've mentioned key partnerships are key in all of that. We don't do this ourselves. So Energy Central is one of those. There are countless others where our relationship with partners like the Port of Blythe, like the offshore renewable catapults in Blythe are really critical to our plans to support the economy. Strategic sites, the last slide. Working with Advanced Northumberland, so again a key area of work that has continued, is attracting investment onto some of our key sites across the county. So we've got the investment zone, the enterprise zones, as you'll be aware of, and we're also working with North and Tyne and leveraging in more support for economic corridors such as the Northumberland line is a key one for us, maximising the economic benefits from the Northumberland line. And there's a strategy to do that, and we've started to make investments that support that economic corridor as well. Which again, I think shares another area that's moved on significantly since the last update. And that was it from the Chair.
Thank you very much. That's a very good update. Do members have any questions? John?
Yeah, 2 or 3 questions, please, Mr. Chair. You've half answered the first one, the North of Tyne going into devolution. The North of Tyne arrangement we have now seems to work very well. Do you think, in your opinion, it will be seamless, or do you think we could lose out, or projects will be put on hold or slowed up because of the change of devolution?
Yes, yes.
No, they shouldn't. I think it is a period of transition. What we've been very clear on is that the projects and the programmes that we've already agreed with North of Tyne must continue. So there will be a sort of a parallel process where that delivery will continue, and it is whilst the new combined authority is developing as well. So there shouldn't be, and that needs to then dovetail. So all of that delivery and our priorities then dovetail into the new plans. I think ultimately there will be a process when the new combined authority is in existence to agree those new priorities. I think we're in a really strong position to make sure that Northumberland's priorities are recognised in that. It's all around the priorities that are make the biggest impact to the North East, and I think we've got some key opportunities in the county which will be recognised in that.
Thank you.
You've probably heard many times from the leader about the red lines he had for when discussions took place, and these red lines are still in place, and transition will be smooth. I think we'll be sharing the rural portfolio, and I think sharing environmental one, or this will be combined now. There was a discussion about that, but Durham was quite tough on this one.
So, you did more than one question?
Yeah, thanks for that. It wasn't so much the political side, it was more the actual officer side, trying to get, it's obviously such a big transition, and I'll take the sort of lose pace on some of these projects. The other two are quite well linked. Your growth plans about small businesses, incubator businesses. Is this going to be advertised? Because I know 2 or 3 people who have very small micro businesses, one just trying to start it off. He seems to be knocking his head against the wall trying to get support. So if that could be advertised, even to councillors. And the other one on the town plan, anyone, thanks Chair, on the town plan, he said he's talking to county councillors, town councillors, community and businesses. In all those towns, I don't think any of them have sort of chamber of trade or chambers of commerce. How are you communicating with the businesses to make sure they're all interested? Because I know 2 or 3 businesses in each of those towns. Some of them have very good relationships with the county. Some from the clue who to ask on what's going on. And without a chamber of trade or chamber of commerce, without a central point to contact those businesses, how are you evolving that? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. So on your first question on the small business service, absolutely that will be advertised. So the team are currently mobilising that, so everything is ready. It will be advertised in early October. So there'll be information which we can circulate, which will be the contact details, etc., for businesses to be able to get involved in that. So absolutely, we'll circulate that. Yes, absolutely. And the second point, in terms of the town plans, various mechanisms, because each of the towns are different. But I recognise your point, Councillor, about engaging with the businesses. So that's mostly been done by quite a lot of just open consultation, where we've had consultation events, and businesses have been able to engage through that process. And then we also have businesses sitting on the town plan groups as well, so they can input through that mechanism. But I think, it's important to say that they've been quite an inclusive, as I understand, quite an inclusive process. So when people have been able to get involved, there's absolutely been an opportunity for them to do that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Malcolm,
Dave, I've got a few questions, Chair. The cultural regeneration and investment. I noticed there's 7 things listed, only one in the South East. Now, 50% of the population in the South East. Now, I would have thought culture bore a close relationship to that. So, what's the rationale between the ones you've picked and possibly ones that we don't really know about?
So, yeah, but it's just Blythe Cultural Hub is mentioned there. We've got some animation program in Blythe also. I think there is a culture program in National Farm also, and we are planning the new cinema. So there are a few other projects. I'm sure Sarah will be able to provide you more details of what we do in terms of these smaller programs. It's not one of the bullet points on the
That's absolutely right. So that's probably a false picture. That what we have on there are some of the big physical developments, but actually there's cultural investment going in across the county. So what we haven't got there are the list of cultural organisations that we've invested in, many of whom are active in the South East. And of course we've got our museums, important museums like Woodhorn, for example, who serve the population particularly in the South East. So it is absolutely part of that investment programme to use culture in all across all of our areas. So I think that's probably painted a false picture, I suppose, in that sense, Councillor.
So, I mean, it is open right across the country. So
There are, yeah,
like
absolutely.
the rural stewardship growth, I presume all parts of Northumberland's practice will be.
We use the DEFRA definition of rural means most of the county is, but there are elements in the southeast corner, Blythe and Cramlington, that aren't counted as rural. So the rest of the county would be, but not those elements.
Right, so can you just, the NSBS, the said helps to SMEs and micros, what exactly is the help? Is it hours, do they get a couple hours to sit down with a consultant in advance or something? Is that it?
So yeah, so there'll be various, what we're also doing through this programme is working with the National Parks Farming Advisors as well. So for those rural businesses we know who actually don't access business support quite often, we're hoping that by engaging farming advisors, that might help access some of those businesses that don't usually do that. And there'll be business advisors attached to it as well. And they will also be able to refer into wider support programmes that we're aware of that are delivered regionally or through other partners.
Okay. The strategic sites. So about defining the next sites for future improvement and housing development. How will that fit into our plan?
So it's absolutely consistent with the local plan. There's nothing that is counter to the local plan. And we're working similarly with colleagues in North Tyneside and Newcastle, because of course the line cuts across all three, but it is consistent with all three of the local plans.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tim?
You answered my question, which is what Councillor Bain has But just to add on a suggestion, is if the small business teams get involved with the borderland scheme early on, we would have found that really useful. And it would have given us a lot more support. So when you do your next round, get them involved early.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thanks, Councillor.
Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Do apologise for laughing before. It wasn't at you, it was the irony of the Caulfield Communities area, such as where British Volt wanted to set up, being classified as rural. I don't see many sheep down there. I don't see many cattle there. In Malcolm, I certainly don't see any cultural hubs coming.
It's in the book.
No, cultural hubs. I remember this county many years ago tried unsuccessfully to attract funding for all the miners' welfare. They seem to have been forgotten. We have a one in Camas, for example, that's privately run. You have a one at New Hartley, where the local area committee actually met their one night, run by the town and parish council. They have been allowed to flounder, while millions have been spent in the nether regions of the county. Perhaps I should explain, and I apologise, Chair, for this. I was chairman of Monoday, Big Northumberland Arts Group, and we used to fund cultural activities up to probably the Playhouse at Annie, which was a frequent visitor to us for that cat out wanting help, which we were pleased to help. And it was to bring visitors to these places, not residents. We tend to forget residents in this county. And I think Malcolm hit it very, I was surprised, I feel as if you let you off a little bit. I also had the pleasure over many years of working with Leader, which helped everyone in Northumberland except the Caulfield communities. The Caulfield communities, I really feel, are being left behind. And I have to exclude Blythe in that. And I hope what does happen in Blythe, there's a fear in Blythe when you go into the shops in Blythe, when you talk to people in Blythe, and I do people in Blythe regularly, there's a fear that with British Volt not coming, the money that was promised, let's be honest, it was to buy wards, the money that was promised could be lost. And I fear when you say there's a timeline for that money to be spent. And if it's not spent on time, that really is lost. And I really appreciate the additional 20 million going towards housing. That is phenomenal. And that's thanks to the hard work of officers of this county, man. Let's give them credit, because they did go out to get it. They really did that. I appreciate that. But I would urge, don't leave South East Northumberland culturally behind. When the car parks are full at Bamburgh, when they're full at Sea Houses, let's see a sign that tells them where the beach is as well. I have 2.6 miles of beach in my ward. Not that long ago, where the Northumberland Gazette, we won best beach in Northumberland. That's hard to believe, but it's true. That's Camas, in case you are wondering where it was. All right. Sorry to go on at length, Chair. I appreciate this report. I appreciate the work that's being done. I think the generation in economic growth in the county was forgotten for a little while. But I think thanks to yourself, to Volchek, and the late, that sounds horrible, the late Janice Rose. We're coming on and we're going to get there, but we have to come together. And at the moment, anybody sitting in South East Northumberland will see them little M signs for millions going everywhere else except there. And I haven't even mentioned Bedlington.
No, I know
You've
that.
let them off there.
No.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alex. I'm not sure where the nether regions of the county are.
Probably right there.
Sarah, did you want to just reply to that, or just reassure Councillor Walsh that the South East has been?
Absolutely, the South East won't be forgotten culturally, Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, I won't mention the white elephant in the room, although I will. I asked at the last meeting, what's happening at British Hall? I go into my back garden and I look, and all last week I see low loaders. I see men all last week digging cables. But the only thing I don't see is my phone ringing to tell me what's happening. And James, I'm very disappointed. I haven't read nothing in the news post. You normally keep me up to date what's happening. I'll have a go at everybody today, Chairman. So we do need some feedback. I did have a phone call last week that fell alive, but I'm not going to say it because it hasn't been confirmed yet. But I hope it is good news, and I hope you're sitting on that good news as well.
Well, I think we can be reassured that as soon as they can give us news, good or bad. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver is next.
Thank you, Chair. As somebody from the nether regions, I'm going to talk a little bit about rural areas. A great presentation, thank you, and good to end on the Northumberland line, which is a truly transformational project and will make a huge difference for generations. But obviously we've got large swathes of the county that are rural, particularly impacted by COVID. A lot of the tourism businesses in particular, we still see pubs closing at the moment and hospitality venues. And so I just wondered what sort of your view about the recovery of some of those smaller tourism businesses. Obviously, big venues are still doing very well. And also linked to that, is there more, and I know this is doesn't sit within your sort of directorates, but is there more we can do to encourage faster rollout of rural broadband? Because we do have, we are still behind the national curve in terms of fibre broadband, and there are businesses or areas of our county where it's actually very difficult to run a business because you can't get decent digital connectivity. So could we do more to encourage BT, to encourage bays to actually sort of get that work happening? I know that and maybe that's something for a future committee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think on the second point, Councillor, the Chris will be able to give and Councillor Wearmouth will be able to give a fuller response to that. But in terms of the new combined authority as well, we know we've made sure that's one of the priorities for the new combined authority as well. So at least we will have the weight of that organisation behind us as well in terms of lobbying for that. Your first point around tourism and that recovery. Interestingly, what we're seeing, we've just had figures on the sort of sector figures for the visitor economy, and what we've seen in Northumberland is that as much as the visitor numbers aren't quite back up to pre-COVID levels, what we're seeing is the spend is up. So actually, I think that's a really positive picture. That's what we want to be seeing. That's what our destination management plan is looking at, that actually we have manageable numbers coming into the county, but when people are here, they are using our businesses, eating out, they're staying longer and investing. So I think that's a really positive sign in terms of the visitor economy.
And I just would like to actually broadband thing. We are, as far as I am aware, we are currently investigating an option to use the satellite connectivity like SpaceX, Starlink and things like that to places where the fiber links are not very visible. So and then other options.
I just asked Sean to add broadband to our work programme, so we're reporting that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I wasn't going to mention anything either about various areas, but when Wojciech mentioned cinema in Ashington, that's been ongoing for 7 years, Wojciech, and I'm sure that the culture of Ashington has changed dramatically since then, because a consultation initially by Ashington Town Council, that wasn't even, the first on the members of Ashington, or indeed the residents either, as list of choice, their first choice. Now, I don't know whether or not that still remains the fact, is whether people in Ashington want a cinema, and I don't know if it'll be viable to actually consult with the people of Ashington again to see that's what they want, or perhaps they want something more, maybe, I don't know, a kind of theatre atmosphere, or somewhere where people could go and performing arts, etc. I know they're going to develop eventually Wandsbeck Square, but in the meantime, there's a great big massive, and I won't use the phrase that people use because it sounds awful, but there's void area still in Ashington, and people have been let down in Ashington for so many years, Volcheck, and we're seeing all these magnificent regeneration schemes where ours has been ongoing for 7 years. And I just think, you know, when is it our turn to actually get something on the ground and not just words and say, yes, there's money there, and in consultation with the board at Ashington, but some of us at the board don't know what's going on in Ashington and when we're going to get the money, and indeed, what is it going to be spent on? So I find that rather difficult to swallow as well. Sorry, and I've gone, and I apologise, Chair.
That's fine, thank you. We'll check.
Yeah, we've got the money for Ashington now in the place. We talked for 7 years without money secured previously. At the moment, we received the money from the Lebanon department. And the cinema is one of the projects. I'm not sure if changing the plans now to get theatre or cultural space or whatever we call it would get feasible now, because I think the business case that needs to be that are ready and has been approved. So I think that's feasible, but you know, we can build around the cinema or the animation program and things like that. What I'm interested in, at least with what we have in that for the space there.
Can I come back, Chair? May I ask if you've actually been, you know, is there a contract being signed with a specific cinema? Because this has been, the same cinema was being, you know, said they were going to come for 7 years because there was no eateries around it. That was why they weren't coming, because the shell was going to be put up on the proviso that Home Bargains was going to be have the shell there. So I can't understand why it's 7 years when the proviso and the money was there to have the shell built for the cinema.
To respond to that, Councillor. So there's no contracts being signed. What we're currently going through now is, because we've had the funding confirmed from the department earlier this year, we need to look at the business case that was submitted that secured those funds to make sure that the elements within that are still viable, because things have changed, the market's changed, there are pressures in terms of budgets now because of inflationary pressure. So what's happening now is all of that detailed work with the intentions that business case set out, are they now viable? And that will be done in consultation with the town board councillor when we're at a point to be able to share those.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Sarah. A good presentation, Sarah, but I'll come back to the question I always raise at the end of these. These regeneration things in Blythe, Beddington, any town is really welcome. But how do we evaluate how that benefits the people who actually are in the surrounding little villages and not these big towns? How do we tell if this is having a knock-on effect on those? And I'm thinking basically of my own, where there's not a shop left in the village, but is a cinema in Ashington actually going to benefit anybody from the outlying areas?
Yeah, it's a really good question, councillor. I think we look at it in various ways. So there's the actual projects themselves will have evaluations built into those, and in outputs that we would wish to see, which are built into individual projects. I think in terms of the wider impact, we would really assess that on wider data that was available to us. So in terms of, these investments are made to support the economy, to support people engaging, and so that sort of evidence, when we get that sort of data, will be able to show us if they're making an impact or not. And that's done on a regular basis when that data is made available to us. And I suppose through things like, for instance, surveys as well, councillors, the way we gauge in which, outside of those economic modelling, evidence is how residents feel about those things as well. So I suppose there's a whole plethora of things that we look at to be able to make that assessment.
And I think, you mentioned as well the work and health strategy. I think it all has to link into that as well, because how do you bring that about for these little villages where in a lot of cases people won't be able to travel into the bigger towns just because of the cost or the lack of public transport. So.
Absolutely, and I think that that support for employability activities across a rural county like ours is definitely a challenge that we know it exists, and we're trying build that into everything we do, because we recognise that's the challenge. But absolutely, councillor, take that point.
Anybody else? Malcolm?
Sorry, I missed one of the phrase. Town and community regeneration. Some years ago, we passed a hierarchical structure for the towns in Northumberland, and I can see that perfectly illustrated here. So I want to ask you, we've got the main towns seem to get their own funding, tens of millions, 90 million lies, and the rest of the towns, which are classed as secondary, including the Borderlands Space Programme. Is that the rationale behind it?
So the rationale for, the funding for, if I've understood the question right, councillor, so the funding for Blythe is based on economic need. So case was made where the need was, and that's where that particular funding stream was targeted at that. In terms of the Borderlands Place programme, those towns were identified as part of, based on the evidence of the sort of the size of towns as part of that wider framework that was set out by the Place programme and the secondary towns. I'm not sure that's answered the question now.
Well, it kind of has, because I think you've said yes, basically. It seems to be that the main towns have a shot at tens of millions of pounds, and that what was classed as, and I argued against it at the time, for exactly this reason. The secondary towns have got a share of £3 million out of Borderlands, something like that. It's not based on the merit of the argument, it's based on somebody's decision as to where that town should fit within the hierarchy of Northumberland. I'm not sure that's right. I like to see this is based on the merit of the argument, not because of something like that.
I think it's more like answering the question, which town fits particular funding stream when the funding arrives. It's not that we are putting them into some baskets and then just, it's a secondary town and we take that for the lower funding, and it's a primary town and we take that for the larger funding pipeline. It's just, when the funding arises from the central government or north of time, we just assess which town would suit that funding the best to.
As you said, it's the economic case.
Absolutely.
It's relied not on any kind of funding.
No.
Okay. Right. Any other questions on that? Right. No, well, thank you very much, members. That was a very good interrogation. If you have to go to the next slide. I will move on. I'll continue on to item 9, which is parks and green spaces. And Paul's going to talk to this one. This was brought to us because it was raised in the previous meeting. A bit of concern about unspent funds or what appeared to be unspent funds in the budget on parks and green spaces projects. So Paul's given us a report, page 105. So I'm just to give us an overview.
Yeah, it's just a very brief update, just to provide some assurance to the committee that fundamentally, yes, there was capacity issues within the team, particularly the impact of last year. Again, just a knock on from Storm Arwen, still a lot of work that the team, it's only a small team that we're having to be involved in prioritising to clear some of the areas that were devastated in our parks and green spaces through Storm Arwen. That work is still ongoing, and there's still further works in terms of some of that replanting activity still to do, that we again developing funding and business cases to secure that. In addition to that, we also had some issues within the overall programme itself in terms of just trying to secure as maximum additional funding that we can, because obviously, whilst it is the county council's funding, trying to secure both in-kind funding as well as external grant funding from a variety of sources to get the best return we can for the overall investment that's been made. And some of that, particularly some of the in-kind funding, takes a little while to sort out. So one of the park schemes that we're now being delivery in is the Eastern Park in Brother. That entailed an in-kind contribution from Thompson's at Brother that were undertaking pathworks and doing some excavation works to put the foundation of the paths in. That's really beneficial to us in terms of, just getting the biggest bang for the buck possible. So in terms of going forward, we have sought to strengthen the park schemes, an additional officer now brought in to support that going forward. We've got a really significant and increasing programme of activity within the parks. And I think it's testament to the hard work of the team that last year, not only did they actually, take forward 6 schemes that are listed in that programme to fruition, but they also still managed to maintain the 11 parks that have green flag status in the county. That's a real accolade, and actually increased that and added a further 12 parks. So again, working really hard. We're conscious that there's a really big programme coming forward, and we're working very hard to deliver that in the current financial year, next financial year as well.
Any questions on that report? Michael?
I've just got one, Chair. All it says in the, I presume this is the generation, it says in the papers that the contribution was not utilised in 22-23, but will be fully utilised in 23-24. Underneath that it says it should be not actually 22-23, 141,000 in the bottom was utilised. So was it or wasn't it?
Yeah, so the overall parks programme was over £400,000 last year, so it included the capital as well as a revenue contribution to capital. It was the revenue contribution to capital that wasn't utilised. So we spent 140k on the capital allocation that we had on the actual implementation of the schemes last year. So that basically just rolls forward into the current year, and we can't on to deliver that now.
Good.
Sorry, yes.
Is there scope to add parks onto this, smaller parks? You will know from a question that I asked the full council about Gallagher Park and some remedial work that was taken after Storm Arwen, and it was a bit of a disaster in there, and it's still a disaster in there. If there is any spare funding, can I have that for that area of park, please? Because I've still got some work to go on in there.
Yeah, so we've got a really big parks programme at the moment, and it is pretty much not all through the formal process, but pretty much earmarked in terms of that pipeline of schemes that we're taking forward. There are some works at Gallagher Park that we are committed to doing at this point in time, which is improving the parking area in there. We are also developing proposals around the replanting activity and including some park improvements there, because we are conscious that it has really suffered through Storm Island, and it's, I wouldn't say it's in a bit of a state, but it does look like a bit of a moonscape in places following that tree clearance activity.
Yeah.
We are in the process of claiming funds from the government through Belwyn, because that was activated, and we're hopeful that some of that funding will come back into the actual parks and to do some of that work as well.
Would you let me know any work activity that's going on in there?
More than happy to do that. So there are grant funding opportunities for tree planting activities through the Forestry Commission as well. So.
I'll be in touch just in case you've got any spare capital. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, Paul, I know you said you want to increase the areas of national food with red flags. Yes, lovely, but what about the ones that you should be increasing to red flag status? I've got one's back Riverside, and there's a business there who is working extremely hard to project her business and to bring, economic growth into the area, which would benefit Ashington, perhaps, visiting Ninemouth, along the beach, etc., and wherever else they may want to go. And yet, council's got to put some money into, a small number of schemes to advanced play areas. When we've got to plead with getting stuff done in there, and it's another area of natural beauty, Paul. So I would love to be spending some money there too, like my colleagues beside me with the same kind of outfit on, to bring that up to perhaps red flag standard, because the businesses, the water sports and everything is an asset to the whole area. So please, if you've got any more money to spare, would you like to receive it in Ashington on the Riverside too?
So we have already invested in the Prospect Riverside, as you referred to the park down there as part of a scheme to improve the park provision down there. So that's one tick in the box in terms of being in that area. It is a real asset to this part of Northumberland, without a doubt. We do recognise that, and it's it is a well-maintained area of land in terms of the work that's undertaken down there. There is a scheme at the moment that's just going to be coming through the capital strategy group that's involving the rowing club down there to improve some of the infrastructure there. That's again 100% grant funded, that we've been able to work with them to support the delivery of to basically improve the pontoon to access to the riverside and things such as that. So there is work that's both happened down there and still planned to happen down there, and we're more than happy to look at further development of that key asset in the area. And if it is something that we can go for a green flag for,
Sorry.
No red flags.
There's no red flags down there.
I was testing you, Paul, I was testing you. See, you were listening. Sorry.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
more questions on that? No, thank you very much. He's nodding. Right, okay, thank you very much for that, Paul. We'll move on to the next item. So we'll go back in the agenda, back up to item 5, which is position at the end of June, first quarter financial performance. I think Jan's going to lead on this one. So Jan's on the screen. So if you'd like to give us the headlines.
Yes, morning everybody. So the report is for the financial position for the first quarter of this financial year. We are currently forecasting an overspend of just under £4.5 million. That includes drawing down some additional funding for the 23-4 pay award, which has not yet been agreed, although we are hoping that it will be agreed in the next few weeks. We did have some money set aside in an exceptional inflation reserve, and the report asked for approval to draw down the remainder of the unspent contingency to meet the additional cost of the pay award. And in relation to that, I just want to point out to the committee that the first recommendation at 2.1 in the report was actually incorrect. It was amended at Cabinet. So there is no need for this to be referred to Council for approval, because Cabinet have the authority to agree the use of that in-year contingency. So I just wanted to clarify that. In relation to the service forecast position, you will see from the report that there are 2 areas where we are experiencing some significant in-year pressures. Not unusual at this time of the year. Our Q1 report nearly always forecasts an overspend at this stage, and we then work hard during the year to bring that back to a balanced position. But no surprises that it's children's and young people and education predominantly where we're experiencing those intense pressures, and children's services in particular. So residential care placements, there is £3.7 million overspend. That's partially offset by other underspends within that service, and also the residential and family placement budget is underspent because of delays in opening the new children's homes. When we set the budget, we had expected that to be May 23, but that's now slipped back 6 months. So we're actually expecting the children's home to open next month. The effect of that is that we have an underspend on the running costs of that home, which we can offset against the external residential care placements overspend. And also Kylo House is running at a significant surplus. So those are the key issues there. Foster care allowances is also a budget which is under significant pressure. That's as a result of the allowances which are set externally and went up by 12.43% this year. So that's another pressure which we're having to manage. Place and regeneration, the main pressure there relates to a shortfall in in planning fee income. Again, when we set the budget, we were expecting that the national planning fee structure would be amended and that we would be able to increase our planning fees in accordance with that. The draft regulations have been laid, but they haven't yet been enacted. That's now unlikely to happen until April 24. So we won't be able to achieve that additional saving from increased income in this financial year. And then the other big pressure in place and regeneration is on the waste PFI contract, just under £600,000. And that is due to new regulations banning the disposal of upholstered furniture from recycling or landfill. And that has an additional cost of handling that furniture, and also further changes to the annual unitary charge, because of inflation being higher again than we assumed at the time that we set the budget. And we also have increased waste volumes in the first quarter. So all of that amounts to a pressure of about 1.4 million in place and regeneration. So in terms of what we're doing about that, it is the normal process that we go through in terms of managing those pressures. So we have mechanisms in place to ensure that we have control over vacancies, given that staffing spend accounts for the bulk of our non-demand led services. So managing vacancies, managing discretionary spend, deferring or not undertaking any non-essential expenditure in year. And we continue to look at some of the corporate budgets to see if we can squeeze more out of those, for example, treasury management, in order to offset some of the service pressures. So at this stage, I think I'm confident that the overspend is manageable within the normal parameters that we have, but obviously we'll keep that under review as we move through the year. Thank you, Chair. I think that's all I wanted to say by way of an overview of the report.
Thank you. Thanks, Jan. Just one quick one from me. Obviously, this is a position as at end of June. We're now sort of 3 months down the line. Obviously, you haven't got all the figures for the current period, but is the general view that things are moving in the right directions in the last few months?
Yes. So we have. There's always a time lag. So we're working on the August figures now. The July figures show that the position had stabilised, so it wasn't getting any worse. But obviously, when you see the Q2 reports in Q2 report in December, we're hoping that that's going to show that things have started to move in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Well, do we have any questions, Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jan. Just in the 6 years I've been a councillor, these reports always show a potential overspend at the beginning of the year, and I think the last 6 years at least, it's always been an underspend at the end of the year. But the other thing that always happens is that the capital reprofiling, and so I'm just curious, is that because we're consistently overly optimistic in our capital profiling forecasting, or are we under-resourced to deliver these capital projects?
I think it's a combination of factors. The size of the capital programme relative to our capacity to deliver, I think, is out of kilter. We never spend anything like what we're, the budget that we've set. And that is something which we are looking at, and we will be bringing forward some proposals for how we address that, because I think that's been a long-standing pattern. And I think also we need to recognise that, you know, a significant chunk of the capital programme relates to externally funded projects and programmes, and that in itself also often brings delays. The other factor, I think, which we've been grappling with, or certainly we're grappling with this year and last year as well, was the huge impact of construction cost inflation. So we are having to go back and revisit business cases and reconfirm affordability, change funding profiles, etc. And that also has resulted in some delays in delivering the capital programme. So combination of factors there, some within our control, some not within our control. But as I said, you know, we're doing a detailed piece of work, and we'll bring back some proposals on that to try and get the capital programme back onto a more realistic footing. Just one final thing that I will say, while we're on the subject of capital programme, as part of the 2024-25 budget setting process, we are looking to bring forward a 10-year capital programme. I think that will help, because I think one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is things being crowbarred into the early years of the capital programme, just to ensure that they're there and that the funding has been secured, when in actual fact, you know, the expenditure is going to fall in later years. So hopefully having a longer term view of capital investment will actually help with setting sort of more realistic expectations about when the projects are going to be delivered.
Thank you. That all seems very sensible. Thank you.
Yes, often politically councillors want it in the budget that year so we can talk about it. Yes. What? Any other questions, Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. Kind of like a general one, Jan, to start with anyway. In the press we've seen a lot of, you know, there's a lot of councils up and down the country almost declaring bankruptcy if they could. The suggestion was we might be underwater to the tune of about 28 million. The problem seems to be the percentage of the budget that's spent on the social services side, the adult and young people services. Has that percentage gone up for us?
Yeah, massively. And this is the big problem, you know, affecting the whole of the local government sector, certainly upper tier authorities, that we are constantly having to find efficiencies elsewhere in order to meet our statutory responsibilities in those areas, children's and older people, and we have seen additional social care funding coming through this year, and we have been given indications that will continue into next year. But I think we all know that the social care funding model is broken, and you know, and I'm not making a political point there. I think there's agreement across, you know, across the whole political spectrum that it is well overdue for reform, and we await government proposals, but we've been waiting for those for a very long time. My view is we're unlikely to see anything coming forward in this side of a general election, so we're going to have to continue to manage as best we can within the system that we currently have. But it is one of the biggest challenges that we face, that, you know, that expenditure on those demand-led areas is increasing significantly year on year, and we have to find efficiencies in order to be able to offset those increased pressures.
Thank you. Jan, forgive me if this is completely wrong. Appendix M, does the final figures on appendix M, we've spent 70 million out of reserves.
Which page is that?
It's page 51.
So to date, we have drawn down £15 million from reserves. We expect to draw down, sorry, there's two there's two aspects to this. So the first column that shows movement in reserves shows what we've actually drawn down in the first quarter. So that's 15.267 million. And then the second column shows the commitments, what we're expecting to draw down during the remainder of the year. So by the remainder of the year, yes, it will be 67 million.
Thank you. I do have other questions. It's just because it's such a long report and there's bits all over. Can you just confirm the debt figure? It's 745.
Sorry, which page are you on now?
24, John.
24.
Treasury management. Right at the top.
Okay, I'm with you. Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Can you just confirm, is that the 744.876 our current debt level?
Yes, that's our external debt.
As at June.
As at 30th of June.
Yeah. And the current interest we're paying on that, the weighted interest, 3.147.
Yes.
And that's likely to go up then.
Well, we're not undertaking any additional external borrowing at the moment. I think if you'll recall, when we set the treasury management strategy for this year, because we were carrying significant amount of cash, partly because we had very high reserves, we agreed that we would follow an under borrowing strategy. So in other words, we use our cash in lieu of undertaking external borrowing. So to an extent, we're insulated from the impact in the short term of rising interest rates. Now, as we know, the base rate was held this month by the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee. And the expectation is that base rates will start to gradually come down as inflation falls. We don't know the exact timing of that, obviously, but the strategy is to try and avoid undertaking external borrowing while we're at or near the peak of borrowing rates. So you won't yet have seen those really high interest rates feeding through into our debt management costs, and we hope to avoid the worst of that.
Thank you. Page 45, are we suggesting that the Rural Business Growth Scheme returned almost £1 million of unspent money?
So yes, the underspent £896,000. So that scheme has now closed, and I assume that any underspend will go back. Will have to be handed back to the funders.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Liz?
Yeah, thanks, Jan. I mean, all of us, when we get this report, that they're very in depth, and I keep coming back to the same thing every time, and this might be something that Sarah might want to address when she comes to her presentation actually, but we always have the recurring theme in here of vacant posts, the underspend being due to vacant posts. I'm just wanting some assurance as to how the recruitment to these posts is going and whether we'll get to that optimum level when there will be properly, when the vacant posts will be filled to an optimum level. And like I say, Sarah might be able to come back to that in more detail. But in this, I was particularly drawn, and you mentioned it at the beginning, about the overspend on services, particularly children and young people's. You know, we've got this 3.7 million overspend on the residential care placements, and it says in the report that the number of placements rose from 41 in September to 59 in June. Same with the overspend on the SEN transport. We've got more routes and more pupils and you know, the adults that accompany them. Those numbers are rising all the time. Do you see that this overspend will just increase further? Because I think the SEN numbers are definitely going to increase further. So that's a big worry that I've got on that bit. And another question, just on the recommendations, the third one about the transfer of the 1.5 million from the Public Health Main Grant to provide additional services to reduce poverty and health inequalities. How can this committee get more details on that? What that 1.55 million is actually going to be used for?
Okay, so just taking those questions in order. So there is a lot of detailed work which is going on looking at SEN transport, home to school transport more generally as well, which is also an area which is of the budget which is under pressure. So there's a significant amount of work which is being done there. Again, you know, this is not unique to Northumberland, and the number of children receiving SEN statements, you know, is increasing nationally, as well as in Northumberland. That is driven by the regulations, which are not within our control. So yes, so we do need to do some work there. As far as the external residential placements is concerned, the strategy is to open more children's homes in Northumberland, which has the double benefit of being cheaper than external residential placements, but also ensuring that our looked after children stay in Northumberland. But there is some highly specialised provision that's required, where it might not be economic or feasible for us to have more local provision in all cases. But you know, but we continue to look at the options there. I'll leave Sarah to answer your point about vacancies, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Oh, sorry, and you also asked about the public health grant. So I'm happy to ask Jill O'Neill to circulate a note to the committee on that point, if that will be helpful, and Sean can send that out.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Any more questions on that? No? Right, thank you very much, Jan. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the lottery. And Pam's going to talk to that.
Thank you. So this report provides an update on the performance of the Northumberland Lottery. We launched this in April 2020, which wasn't wonderful timing, but actually it provided much needed funding to our local communities and local groups. It enables income from the ticket sales to be apportioned between the approved local community groups and the council. To date, the lottery has raised over £134,000 for registered causes in the community. We do have strict eligibility criteria for those groups when they're applying to be able to sell those tickets. To date, we have 119 community groups who participate in the scheme, and we've got another 5 that we are currently vetting and validating before, you know,
they access the scheme. In terms of how we operate it, we use an organisation called Gatherwell. Gatherwell are an external lottery manager, so they provide a lot of the systems behind the scenes, and they actually have, you know, a lot of stringent policies in place. They do internal audits on how the scheme is operated, and that is supported by a whole series of policies, internal policies that we use within the council to make sure that the governance is right and that we comply with our requirements with the Lottery Commission and the gambling legislation as well. You can see in section 6 how each pound of the cost of a ticket, how that pound is apportioned. So 50 pence of every ticket sold goes to the local community group. 10 pence of that comes into a central council fund, and from that 10 pence fund, that's where we deduct the cost, which was just over £1,000 last year. So that enables us to run the scheme, to administer the scheme, and that left a balance which then goes into the community chest. So you'll see in the report there was £6,152 that was transferred into the council's community chest. The total cost for the council to operate the scheme was £1,541. There's then 17 pence of each pound that goes to Gatherwell, and that's what they retain to operate the scheme. I do want to draw your attention to the criteria for participants. So it is considered low risk in terms of how it's seen. It's equivalent. It's deemed equivalent to selling raffle tickets. It is the tickets are generally sold to people who are associated with the community groups. We don't market it. We don't promote it. So it's done purely by the local community groups. You can't purchase a ticket and then receive the prize straight away. There's no instant gratification. You have to buy the ticket. You wait the draw, which is held on a Saturday evening. So it's a once a week draw, and funds have to be cleared. So for those people who are buying the ticket, they must be able to pay for them with a direct debit card, and those funds must be cleared. If they were to win a prize, that would all need to be checked before the prize was paid out. Maximum number of tickets that anybody can buy is 20. And we do have controls in place to monitor that those caps aren't exceeded. What I would say, there is a graph at the back of the document which shows you that actually during the cost of living crisis, the number of players participating has reduced. However, the number of groups who wish to participate in the scheme is on the rise. So clearly they're still seeing that this is a benefit to them. I think, in conclusion, we believe that the lottery provides much needed source of additional funding for our local good causes. It's only Northumberland based groups that participate, and I think there's probably nothing else for me to say in terms of the report. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Just one thing before we get into discussion, I will declare an interest, a non-prejudicial interest, but I am a director of Any Youth, which is one of the charities that receives money. I think it's prejudicial. Okay, right, do we have any questions, John?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thank you for bringing this report, because I think it was myself who asked, but I was quite dubious about it when it was first announced, thinking there were so many lotteries out there that it wouldn't take off, but obviously it has, and it's great for all the community groups that are receiving funding from this. The reason I asked for this report, Chair, is that whether I'd missed it or not, but I've seen very little reports about it. I don't know whether it'd be possible to, and I know it comes to community groups who don't know about it, whether it's a good chance now to advertise it again or promote it again and see if we can get more community groups involved. But I'm pleasantly surprised by how it's taken off, and it does fantastic courses. But I would like to see more publicity about it if that's possible.
Yes, I think the last time we brought it to this group, we talked about doing a new launch, because the original launch had happened, as I say, when COVID was happening, and so we were about to do that. And I think in consultation with our community groups, it felt actually it's a little bit, at that time, it was insensitive to say, you know, look at this scheme when, you know, there were other priorities for the groups in the community indeed. But if that's something that this group believes that we should revisit and relaunch and market, then happy to do so.
So I think it's more the marketing to the groups rather than the general public.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they get better members and contacts about it.
Yeah.
Alex?
Chair, thanks, Chair. Chair, can I just say, when I read this, it brought a smile to my face. Because I've seen monies being available to various groups that perhaps wouldn't normally get monies.
Yeah.
But I urge members to look at the website as well, because it actually tells you the percentage, how active they are, and I'm sure groups do that, and then they try to increase the take up themselves. I'm a little bit worried about John's recommendation, because I spotted, my wife and I thought, oh, we'll do this. So I looked through that exhaustive list, Chairman, and I thought, the ones I would want to support aren't on. So I contacted them, and I said, you do it, and then I'll put my money towards helping you as well. So if John doesn't mind that my group gets the name in first, John, and then we advertise it there for the others. Is that right? I'll just say, as a new member, this is terrific, and what a great idea to put it into the community chest afterwards, so it's shared even further. Well done.
Thank you. Just one thing about obviously, you're clear there's a strict rules of who can and can't do it. It's got to be a group, it's got to be not an individual, it's got to be for a community purpose that benefits Northumberland in some way. Just one thing that occurred to me was that maybe we should add an additional sort of bar in that it's very unlikely to come up, but that to make sure that we don't support any groups whose aims do not or conflict with our corporate policies and plans. You know, there are some charities which are controversial, you know, politically, and although they may be charities, and they may argue that they are helping in the way, you know, I think it would sit ill with me if we were supporting a group that contradicted our own, you know, policies and plans and corporate ethos, should we say. So, I mean, I would propose that we maybe add that as a additional. Is that agreed? Yeah.
So just to clarify, just to add that extra sort of level of assurance as well. I have had another look at the terms and conditions as well of participation, and so we can reject any application for any reason, and they don't have the right of appeal. So I think that actually supports.
Well, I think that's fine. We should keep that. But I think, you know, if we are going to say no to it, we do with a reason why.
Absolutely.
And I think if we have a policy that, you know, so your certain aims of your group may conflict with our corporate ethos, then we've got a reason.
Thanks, Pam. I noticed in the report that this organisation, it says it issues gambling awareness advice to any players who attempt to buy more than the 20 tickets, but the maximum so far has been 11. So I'm assuming that they haven't needed to do this in any.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do we have any check on what if somebody did try to buy 21 tickets? Have we any check on what advice they would be given? Do we have any oversight on that?
Yes.
And the second question is, if somebody won the 20, I noticed the £25,000 first prize has never been won, and if you look on the website, it says it's $1 million to 1 or something in the table. If it was won this weekend, where's the 25 grand coming from? Is there a prize pot, or is there enough to cover it, is what I'm saying?
Yes, there is. There's actually, there's two parts to that question. So the first part of the question is, I'm responsible for operating this scheme. I have 2 members of staff, and so we get regular reports and we monitor the take-up and the usage. So that's where that 11 came from. Now that will change over time, so that's why we are monitoring the performance of it from that perspective. I think the other aspect is the chances of winning are 1 in 5 across all of the different amounts of the cash payouts. But yes, they absolutely by law must ensure that they have that cash available to be able to pay out.
we see a percentage of the pound goes into the price point, just one, yeah, 50. Right, any other questions on that? No? Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7, this is annual workforce report. As I said.
The committee will recognise the format of this report. It's a report that's received on an annual basis. It's quite a data-rich, substantial report, so I don't propose to go through it in any great detail. I will provide comments and qualifications to the various categories of data that are in there as I move through my presentation though. So in terms of highlight, taking things sequentially through the report, we have seen a decrease in our turnover, which when we benchmark against other organisations, we actually have a fairly low turnover rate by comparison, which is a good thing. Which suggests that our retention strategies are working. People come and work at Northumberland and then wish to stay at working for Northumberland. All of our statutory mandatory training this year, our targets were met. We did see a decrease in our appraisal completion. I'm afraid I'm not able to offer the committee an explanation as to why that might be, but just to assure you that we are putting in place remedial actions with the areas that underachieved to ensure that we get those levels up this year. I would say that obviously, whilst we do push hard on appraisal completion, it's more about the quality of the conversations that we're having in relation to people's performance, as opposed to the tick box, I guess, that a lot of people see as of actually delivering the annual appraisal. In terms of casework, we have seen an increase in our disciplinary cases, our grievance cases, and I would expect that. This is probably the first year, if you bear in mind that our largest workplace, which is County Hall, reopened in April 22 to allow people to come back into the office. I think a lot of disciplinary grievance cases were artificially repressed, masked during COVID. What that increase represents is actually a return to fairly normal levels. So nothing to be too alarmed about, I don't believe. In terms of the final review meetings that we have under our sickness absence policies, again, that's returning to normal levels. We saw a drop-off in our absence levels during COVID. We take a staged approach to managing absence, so it stands to reason that if we saw a drop-off in our absence levels, people weren't hitting the triggers during that period, I would expect that decrease to work its way through to probably more normal levels in the current year. With regard to our recruitment activity, and I'll pick up on the points of Councillor Dunn here around vacancies, we recognised in late 2021 that we have some issues around recruitment. We had been previously enjoyed a fairly passive approach whereby we posted adverts and people applied, and we had to do very little active in order to seek interest in our vacancies. We recognised in late 2021, probably as a result of the pandemic and the labour market downturn, that we needed to do something a little bit more proactive. So we introduced a 4-element strategy, and that's largely being delivered now. We sought strategic recruitment advice from an industry expert, and we've now equipped our recruitment team with a sustainable set of skills to be able to actively attract good quality candidates. We've seen a significant increase in our applications since that was the case. We're now averaging 19 applications per vacancy that we advertise. That is averaged across all of them. Obviously, we see some lower levels in the less attractive vacancies, and I'll come on to that in a moment. We did have a look at our problem areas. We created a heat map of vacancies in particular that we were concerned about, where we were just failing to attract high calibre, high numbers of candidates, and those included social workers, residential workers, your sort of professional technical type roles like the environmental health officers, trading standard officers, and also educational psychologists and individuals who might have expertise in regeneration. Just turning to the point that Councillor Dunn made earlier, regarding our ability to fill vacancies. I think this is twofold. I think we have vacancies as they sit on establishment, and then we have recruitment activity around actually trying to fill those vacancies. And there's a decision made at budget manager level as to whether or not to fill vacancies. And as Jan previously alluded to, one of the ways that we're trying to bring the budget back under control is to try and dissuade managers from filling vacancies in a knee-jerk, like-for-like way. We're actively encouraging them to think creatively around their vacancies. Do you need to fill that to the same degree with the same kind of person? Is there an opportunity to redistribute responsibilities amongst other team members? Could you look at people who might be able to offer work to us on a flexible basis rather than filling full-time? Could we look at apprenticeships? We're trying to just elicit this thinking in managers so that they're thinking more creatively about their vacancies and they're not just knee-jerking into like for like. And one of the byproducts of that is obviously there is a saving opportunity there. With regard to actually vacancies that are sitting in establishment and they might actually be impacting on our ability to fulfil our service delivery requirements, at the moment we don't have a clear line of sight on what that's like. Like I said earlier, we rely upon budget managers to effectively perform local establishment control. We are currently about to initiate a project to look at how we get a better line of sight on those vacancies. So pulling establishment control into a central place rather than it being buried in individual budget sheets. So with regard to the more proactive work that we're doing around vacancies, I've already alluded to the work that we've done around upskilling the recruitment team. We've introduced a new applicant tracking system. You'll notice from the report that it's quite data poor. I hope this time next year we'll be able to offer you something a lot more data rich, so we'll be able to actually talk to you around fill rates and how our efforts are paying off and really sort of being able to demonstrate that return on investment, because it is an expensive activity, recruitment, and we need to understand that what we're doing in terms of our efforts is actually paying off in filled posts with high quality candidates. So this time next year, having introduced the applicant tracking system TriedPad in April, we should be able to demonstrate its value and worth. We are doing a lot of work around the early days or that kind of candidate management work. So for individuals that are recruited to the council, we're putting more effort into onboarding them, keeping that relationship going. We're trying to offer them really fulsome and valuable induction activities, and we're seeking feedback in a way that we didn't previously on people's actual experience of applying to a role in the council. We've got a much better online presence in relation to ourselves as an employer. I don't know whether committee members have looked recently. We now have a front page dedicated entirely to jobs and careers at the council. We use real life stories, people's real life experiences. We're really heavily espousing our values and the behaviours that we want to see. So people are self-selecting before they even come and join the council. They come and join the council because they're purpose-driven people who want to make a difference to the life of residents. And that is very much how we're presenting ourselves. And I think differentiating ourselves from other local government employers. There's not many other local authorities regionally that have done this level of investment, have created this level of content, this presence online. We do collaborate with our colleagues regionally. We recognise that there are economies of scale to be achieved. We're all facing the same recruitment pressures around children's social workers and those professional technical roles. And we've just recently found out, there was an email to our Chief Executive to advise them that there has been some government funding to support careers promotion in local government, and the North East is going to act as a regional pilot for that. So rather than us putting ourselves out there as an individual employer, we will be talking about the merits and the benefits of working in local government in general and really bringing it to the forefront of people's minds in terms of their career options. We do have a problem, I think, around the perception of local government careers. It's difficult to glamorise what we do. We know what we do is a great word, but it's difficult when you're competing against other private sector employers potentially. We can't compete on the level of pay. We've got very robust, rigid and quite rightly so pay scales, and that's in order to protect ourselves in terms of equal pay claims, etc. We can't compete with private sector, so it's about looking at the value-added stuff that we do rather than just the salary. And hopefully, by doing that, we're not attracting people who are who are lured by the promise of a big salary, but instead the actual value of the work that they're going to be doing, the fulfilling nature of the work that we do. Where that's not possible, and we're quite realistic about this, we do have a process whereby managers can apply to us to apply a market forces allowance, effectively being able to sort of bring our levels up on the basis of business case to the market rates for the job. And we've had to do that in areas like building control. I'll use the example of a building control officer. There is a private sector provider who would offer £45,000 in a car, whereas, you know, realistically, according to our job evaluations, we can offer in the low 30,000s. We can't compete with that. So we do have this mechanism to be able to consider on a case-by-case basis those market forces allowances. And talent acquisition in general, our whole approach to recruitment is now part of the best talent and opportunities, best project work stream. So we are looking at it in greater detail to really sort of refine that offer. Moving on from recruitment, we saw a 20% increase in year in terms of our sickness absence. Again, I referred earlier to that kind of returning to normal. A lot of the sickness absence that we experienced in the previous year will have probably been quite masked. You know, people working from home, people sort of battling through. And we do have policies in place now around managing respiratory illnesses in the workplace, where we actively discourage people from coming to work and potentially infecting their colleagues and creating a bigger issue than just that one isolated individual. So I would expect to see that. I'm not alarmed by that. And like I say, that is returning to sort of pre-COVID levels of sickness absence. You know, in terms of benchmarking, we're towards the lower end in terms of average days lost. We do have some incomplete years of data you'll see from the report, but that's because there was no returns being made on absence levels, probably for the very reasons that I've outlined. So we've lost that ability, but I think we'll probably get more fulsome data in the current year. In terms of trends and reasons for absence, I can speak to the current year. We are seeing an uptick in mental health. And when you dig into the skin of that, because we categorise that in fairly broad terms in our sickness absence recording system, we categorise it as anxiety, depression, or stress. When you actually dig under the skin of that, the large majority of the causes are around personal issues, which causes us to stop and ask ourselves as an employer, what is our actual ability to be able to impact that? You know, I'd be extremely concerned if I saw work-related stress in there. We do track that through in the form of staff surveys and pulse surveys, just to sort of take the temperature on the workforce and understand whether work-related stress is an issue. And it's there, but I don't think it's something that has fluctuated as greatly as the personal issues. So we're talking about things like issues at home, financial hardship. So we've asked ourselves, what can we do to try and assist employees, because it kind of goes beyond our ability to impact. And we're looking very much around providing people with advice and guidance on financial hardship. We might be, you know, supporting individuals to build their own levels of personal resilience. We need to act as an employer, you know, with compassion and understanding, but I think we need to recognise that there probably is a line that we can't cross in terms of helping these individuals. It's about, I think, about that sort of self-development approach, you know, those personal resilience techniques that we've been deploying. In terms of developments, in terms of how we can support people, we have got a psychological wellbeing coordinator. That role was introduced in late 2021, but we're really starting to see the impact of that bite now. She's a fantastic resource. She's very highly regarded. We get a lot of very positive feedback from her services. She effectively acts as a triage to our occupational health service, so we know that the referrals that go into occupational health for that psychological clinical support are the ones that really need it. A lot of it can be nipped in the bud by our psychological wellbeing coordinator, who can just help people through those sort of personal resilience strategies and signpost them to alternative sources of support. That's all I wanted to say on sickness. In terms of staff bank, everything's heading in the right direction. This was an initiative that we developed ourselves to try and drive down our agency spend to become a little bit more self-sufficient in terms of our short-term workforce needs. Again, it's about breaking down habits. I think the knee jerk is for managers to go to agency because they know they can get somebody really quickly. You know, there's a pair of hands waiting there for them instantly to help deliver. What we're trying to do is build up a resource pool of talented, well-skilled individuals. So rather than going to agency, managers would come to our staff bank as an alternative, and we would be able to offer them fairly responsive service in terms of providing work for the workforce needs. We're also doing a lot of work with services to try and break the dependency with agency. So looking particularly at our areas where we've got long-term agency spend and trying to shift those individuals from agency books onto our own books so that we can directly employ them on our terms. And I think ultimately that's beneficial to the individuals as well. I wanted to speak briefly about staff survey. We have experienced a drop in our response rate. In terms of how I would account for that, I think this is another question of quality rather than quantity. It was something that previous management drove extremely hard at getting completion rates up. You know, people was effectively herded into a room and given the means to be able to complete the surveys. They were incentivised. For me, I'd rather have 51.8% response rate, but have it meaningful, quality, people who felt personally motivated to respond than people who maybe felt pressure to respond. We've introduced a process whereby we're taking temperature checks of the organisation more frequently. We will be waiting 18 months between our full surveys, but there will be 6 monthly pulse surveys in between. And the next one is actually due to go out in October, so it's just on the horizon there. It's positive overall in terms of the staff survey, the feedback we're getting, but the areas that we do have concern about, we are kicking those up with service areas and creating sort of action points, action plans for them to complete. Sore thumbs in terms of the staff survey, financial difficulty is being flagged much more than it was previously, and that in turn might explain why we've got those sort of stress levels and associated absences. And then finally, whistleblowing, fairly consistent with previous years, although I expect we'll see a drop in the current year. We've only had one whistleblowing complaint received this year. Read into that what you will. You've got to assume that people don't have the concerns, therefore aren't motivated to make the report. I certainly hope it's that way, rather than people are, you know, bottling up their concerns and not being forthcoming. I think culturally, we've made a shift to being more open to hearing people's whistleblowing concerns, so I expect it to be the former rather than the latter. And that was all I wanted to say, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Lynn, you first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I've still got issues and concerns over the sickness rates, and in years past, we have had in front of us reports actually explaining the areas and why the people are off sick. Perhaps a back problem, you know, as you say, it could be because of mental health issues, but at least we had a more detailed idea of where the sickness areas was, and if there's a resolution could address it. So I would really like that, Chair, to come back as we used to have that. But when you're looking at the still the sickness level in various departments, that still worries me, because it's the areas that are, you know, that have the highest vacancy levels. So I'm concerned that is it stress related, work related, because they haven't got the facilities that they should have in order to hire the staff needed, and that therefore it's putting pressure on themselves mentally. So I believe there's quite a bit of this still work stress related, and I don't know how we can address that. So I don't know, putting a stick and plaster off and putting a stick and plaster over and just go and say, well, we're looking for, you know, like efficiencies. If you haven't got the people on the ground actually go and deliver these, it's false economy. So, I mean, I've really got massive concerns over that. Sorry to be, you know, I mean, yes, you're going in the right direction, but I still have massive concerns in areas where we're underfunded because of efficiencies, and really asking the managers for to save this, and then, but who are you going to save them? Manager level, or bodies on the ground that actually deliver these services? That's my biggest concern. Thanks.
and it is a phenomenon, you know, you take people out of the workforce because of they might have stress-related illnesses, it puts additional pressure on colleagues. I think you're right to call that, and I'm more than happy to bring a further detailed report back to this committee so you can get under the skin of that more.
Yeah, that'd be really useful. Alex?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I must highlight, when you consider we've been watching on TV how a local authorities being taken over by the government, and we understand the reason why, it's because of not paying the female staff the right amount of money. It's absolutely incredible to read that Northumberland actually pay their female staff on average higher than what they pay their male staff, and that's been transformed within a couple of years. So I compliment that. And it was interesting when you looked at that top table there. It was only Paul and making presentations today. Who knows, one day the administration may be the same with their cabinet and reflecting numbers likewise. That's another story for another time. Chair, can I just say, I do have a concern, and it's similar to my colleagues there. Lots of tables to read, too many tables to read for me. But one table I'd like to have seen was when you said, and it's finding it, isn't it, where you said on page 66 here, the turnover is 11.47, which is lower than national. That's okay. Well, that can hide a lot of things, because I remember seeing a table where planning were about 30% understaffed. Now, I have one-to-ones in planning, the position I have as a shadow cabinet member. And I'm aware people are leaving the authority, not for more money, but because their caseload is less. When Northumberland has the 9th highest number of planning applications in the country, the workload on an under-resourced department is greater. Well, that figure there does not tell me that. It's a face-to-face that's told me that. And that leads me to a question. Jan raised the fact there was £1 million to be found by planning because the government still haven't determined what the fees should be. And I think every local authority in the country is saying other services should not be paying for planning fees. And that's what's happened, but that's another argument. It should be somewhere else. But if I was a director and I'm saying I'm heading towards £1 million short, but I'm 30% undermanned, and that may just add up to that million I'm looking for, that hides that possibility. So I think that's a table, if I may call you Sarah, that perhaps could help us see where there is a gap. And, you know, I was talking recently to Nigel, Nigel helped me.
Walsh.
Yeah. And a department of 300 people. That's a massive number. And I think it's similar in planning, I'm not certain. So when you start talking about 30%, big numbers. And they're not going for more money, and they're not going for stress. They're going because the workload per person. I wish Colin Horncastle had been here. Yeah, I'm sure he would have given you the exact numbers. I can't recall them. I can't, I'll be honest with you. But it's so, and how many planning applications are being determined in minutes? It's so, are they the right decisions as well? And planning affects everybody in this room and everybody out there. So I think that's a table that needs to be expanded upon. Thank you.
And I'm happy to bring that detail back, Chair, in terms of the reasons for leaving. I appreciate once people have left, though, it's probably too late, but it must inform our future strategies around retention.
Liz?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to thank Sarah for the report. It was very detailed, and I thank her for the explanation to my previous question. I just want to go back to that, and I was interested in what you said about the establishment vacancies as opposed to other ones. But at the end of the day, I think that is what this committee would want to find out, whether those vacancies are affecting the level of services that we can offer. And I don't know what the answer is of a report coming back here, but just to sort of scrutinise that further, just to think about something that maybe could come back to this committee on that line. How do we keep track of whether our frontline services have actually got the right number of people in place to function?
If I may, I think one of the ways that we could probably monitor that is through sort of staff perception, and it may be something that we can put into the pulse survey that we're looking at in October.
Right.
Something specifically around, you know, as an employee of the council, how do you see your role contributing to service delivery? Do you see any issues with service delivery? Are you missing colleagues? Do you feel? I mean, it does open the floodgates somewhat, because I think people constantly feel that services are under-resourced. They would always have a preference, more pairs of hands. So it is a little subjective, I'd say, but it's certainly something we can explore through the staff survey if you'd like me to do that.
And those pulse surveys, they could be fed back to this committee.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
And the only other question I had was on page 93. The implications arising from the report, where under the property, the WorkSmart project has implications for the use and functionality of the building's estate. How has it affected this building? Is it being used efficiently, and what's happening with it basically?
That is subject to a different project that is being looked at under the best use of resources. They're doing a wholesale review of the WorkSmart initiative, and the reason that it sits under the best use of resources is because we're talking about the use of our property, our assets, the estates. So it is getting picked up, and I've no doubt it will come onto your radar in due course.
Thank you.
And Nick,
yeah, just a great report, and I particularly like the bit where it says what does success look like, because I think if we saw that more often, it would, you know, very focused on what you're trying to achieve, which is great. You did touch upon the appraisal levels, but there's basically a quarter of people and not getting any formal feedback each year on how they're doing. They may be getting it informally, it may not be an issue, but that does sort of ring sort of slight you know, alarm bells. Presumably you're addressing that. Do you think, as an HR professional, the authority is getting the balance right in terms of home working? Because obviously we had a massive disruption of COVID, which the authority reacted incredibly well to, and now there's an opportunity for a more blended sort of model, but that sort of face-to-face contact remains important, particularly for younger people. And then a related question to that is, there was, in one of these previous reports, a concern raised about the ageing profile of the workforce. Has that changed? What direction is that going in? And then the HR helpline, what sort of inquiries? You get 20,000 inquiries, but what sort of inquiries are they? Sorry,
in terms of the home working balance, I think we have seen an increased trend for people to come in and use the buildings more frequently. I'd say that services are mindful to that. I can speak personally from my perspective. I mind less about where people work, more about them delivering what they need to, and if it means that they deliver better from working from home, then so be it. I know certainly from my perspective personally, if I need to do report writing, I'm much happier to do that at home, but I absolutely recognise the value of having that human contact and coming in face to face and just being around colleagues. I think we lose something quite subtle around just that kind of learning by osmosis, being around your colleagues, picking up on the sort of the mood of the organisation at any given time. So I think that there is value in that. We are exploring that. It's again part of the WorkSmart review that I talked about under the best use of resources in terms of how people are using home working differently to how they have done previously, because behaviours have shifted, there's no doubt about that. With regard to the ageing profile, I don't have data on that. What I would say is that we are putting more effort into our talent management and succession planning, so we are mindful that we are coming to a bit of a cliff edge in terms of an ageing population and the skill loss and the knowledge and expertise that will come about that. And what we are doing is investing a lot at the front end to ensure that there is talent coming up behind that. So whilst I haven't got the data, I can assure that there are strategies in place to address the risk. The helpline, I think, in terms of helpline activity, it's a lot of quite mundane stuff that people could do better in terms of self-service, but again, referring back to the BEST programme, the best use of IT and digital will allow people to do things more for themselves, and I guess more of those routine inquiries that we have to focus on because there is that volume and demand. We'll be able to use, artificial intelligence. We'll be able to use, the tools, digital tools that will help us address those queries. Those individuals who are currently involved in manning the helpline can turn their minds and their resources to something probably a little bit more fulfilling and valuable.
Thank you.
Well, let's have John next.
Yeah, really a follow-on from one of Nick's questions. How easy are you finding it to get people back to work? I know there's different reports saying that people do work on the circumstances, do the productivity just as good as it is at home. But for the reasons you stated, I think it is beneficial if people do work with other people. So how difficult are you finding it getting people back into County Hall? And also sort of from a council point of view, it can be frustrating pre-COVID if you wanted to talk to them enough to say you knew which office to go to. Now if they're working from home, it's more difficult to get hold of. So the productivity might be up or level, but for certain things it's not as good. The other point is that obviously living in Malta all my life, I know a lot of people who work up here, and over the last 6 months or so, a year, the working atmosphere up here has dramatically improved. I think that's across all sections, and I'm surprised but quite pleased because a lot of people I've spoken to, friends who were worried about whistleblowing previously are not now, and they're quite happy to whistleblow. So I'm quite surprised. I thought your whistleblowing numbers would have gone up, but it's a good that they haven't. But there is an atmosphere where people aren't frightened to do that now. But it's getting people back into, which I think is so important, working back in County Hall for
Yes.
their own health.
In terms of the challenges around that, it is a challenge because I think people have become habitually used to staying at home, but that's really about equipping managers to have those conversations and be very clear in terms of their expectations and culturally what we're trying to achieve and making sure that an individual's motivation to come to work is aligned with those values. Like I say, accessibility is an issue in terms of sort of nailing down where people are, and if you have any specific concerns, I would encourage you to take those up with the manager. It's important that you as elected members are able to access offices. It shouldn't be an issue. We are very well connected, we're fully equipped with devices, etc., and you would expect somebody to be as available as they were, but you don't have that incidental contact that you might have previously.
Thank you. Malcolm, next.
So are you saying the apprenticeship campaign, are we cherry picking more the apprentices? Are we looking for individuals that are more centred towards where we want them to go, shall we say?
Yes, we are.
Is that what we want?
Absolutely, and I think that previously we wanted to get high levels of apprentices, and we sort of did mass recruitment and we bring everybody in, and the strategy around it was fairly loose. What we have done is created strategy around it now, so we're focusing our attention on areas of the organisation where I talked about this cliff edge of the ageing population. We're bringing young people and other apprentices into the organisation at that lower level with the intention of bringing them through, and in areas where we know are shortage occupations. And I would also say that we're taking fewer, and we're probably a little bit more mindful of the quality of the candidates that we're taking in now. And we've got a policy of being very, very clear what the onward plan is for those individuals. We invest a great deal in that individual's development, and they should be segueing from an apprenticeship into a permanent employment opportunity within the council. We now insist that you don't take anybody on at this end unless you can see them out the other end.
The whistleblowing data, it would be helpful if we could have some sort of date. I know not exact date, but first quarter, second, whatever, some sort of reference to the time frame So like you said, you've only had one this year, so,
Yes.
you know, that's, you know, what you've seen improvement. And my last question is about the position created through BEST using the transformational funding. Now that was for a specified period. Is that looking to be made permanent, those positions?
That's a conversation for me to have with Jan. It's a transformation funded post because we recognise it's the head of OD, I think you're referring to. We recognise the amount of organisational development activity that needs to go on and help us to deliver best, to get the organisation to where it needs to be, to take us through that transformation journey. And that's how we justified, you know, the release of the transformation fund in order to support that post. I would love for that to be a post that we can consider longer term beyond the end, but I think that the proof will be in the pudding. I think they will be able to demonstrate their value and worth whilst they're here with us. We talk about BEST and the transformation programme. It's a continuous journey. It's not something that has a hard start and a hard stop. And I would hate to think that, you know, once we got to the end of the funded programme, this 3-year period, that role wasn't recognised as adding value to the organisation. But like I said, that's a conversation that we'll need to have in the longer term.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, thanks, Chair. Well, just coming back on my colleague councillor Wallace when he said about the vacancies just in planning alone. I wonder if we can have a report to see how many vacancies there are, say, from last year to this year in the areas which are of a concern, where you've got, you know, like staff levels who are not well and mental health, etc. So it would be very useful to have a report on other areas as well that are of concern, and to see what the vacancies are, as I say, from last year to this. And the other thing, I was quite concerned about this, and I'm terribly sorry to say, but when you're getting on about apprentices, and you're going to be more focused and stuff on apprentices, I find that, sorry, I just don't, that doesn't fit in well with me, because we have got a lot of very, very, well, maybe it's not, it can't be, you know, academically astute, but they're very good with their hands, etc., with learning disabilities, people with autism. And, you know, if you're going to be more focused, could we have reporters to see what focus and what level are you expecting these to be coming? Because I thought we were a council that fits everybody for best value, etc. And to me, that was a red flag to me, unfortunately, when you said it's going to be more focused. Because are you actually going to use these apprentices to fill in some of these vacancies we have? When we've always had apprentices that's covered all spectrums, and that worries me, Sarah.
Yeah, and I apologise, probably, I don't want there to be an inference that when I refer to quality candidates, that means that we're going to be acting in any way that isn't inclusive. We absolutely, I think that this goes to the diversity. You know, people bring different things to work, don't they? The more diverse a workforce we have, the more different perspectives that we're able to bring in. People have different mixed skill sets. Like I say, I really don't want you to think that because we're saying quality candidates that I'm suggesting in any way that we're making things exclusive. It's absolutely still with the imperative of being inclusive as an employer.
It's because I thought, well, you know, because, you know, you'll have people who are good with hands that could be, you know, working, you know, in local services and things like that. And I just thought that it sounded rather daunting, so I must apologise if I picked up the wrong way.
It's my clumsy language.
Thank you.
Do you have a
Chair, very, very brief. Could I ask just for information, nothing else? Do we have a policy where a certain percentage must be disabled? A certain percentage must be minority, ethnicity, anything like that? I'm sure in Wansbeck's days, when I was a councillor, there was always a percentage where you tried to make it open to be totally inclusive, but you went out of your way, so you were positive towards it. But what you're saying is, we're not.
What you're describing is a concept called positive action.
That's what I was trying to say, Sarah.
And we don't have positive action, but we're very, very mindful of our inclusivity.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We're not trying to hit targets because that can actually become quite meaningless. And it's ticking box exercises again. Instead, we're looking at people in the whole. You know, we've got very inclusive recruitment practices. We're very supportive of people who have additional challenges in terms of their employment. So whilst we don't have a target, we do have policies in place that highlight our inclusivity as an employer and our ability to sort of accommodate different needs within the workplace.
Thank you, very acceptable answer, Chair.
Thank you.
And could we possibly have the numbers of apprentices that will have that on that spectrum, please?
On the, as in,
That's
with,
what disabilities.
yes,
Don't
with,
mind, thank you,
yeah,
thank you.
there's basically a breakdown of our current, demographic, should we say?
Yeah.
Male, female, disability,
Thank you.
orientation, racial, all the other protected characteristics. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, any more questions on that? No, thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you. Thank you. Done those ones. So we're back to number 10 now. That's the work programme. As you'll see, that's 107 to 112. We'll pick up a couple of items for this meeting. We're going to see if we can get some reports on.
Yeah, there's a couple of issues. Obviously, the rollout of broadband, the council over raised was on that, and obviously I need to talk to Sarah. I thought you could possibly do in one report, Sarah, but maybe more than one. But my list kept on getting longer and longer, so we'll have a separate conversation.
Yeah. So, whatever, as long as we get the data, whatever format is better than. Okay, any other questions on the work programme or queries? No? Okay. Item 11, urgent business. I'm not informed of any. So, sorry, Mark, urgent business.
Sorry, Chair, I've got two. Really urgent. I noticed one of our things is scrutinising risk assessment. I think it'd be handy because I've sent things to the risk assessment on a different committee, but it'd be handy to have a presentation of risk assessment so we're aware of what to look for, what we should be doing.
Okay, that's good.
My second point is we were assured we'd get a report on campus. Now, we were sure we'd get it the next month. This was 3 months ago. We did. I had to look through the video of that meeting again because there was a slight inconsistency.
Weren't we told that that as soon as commercial confidentiality allowed the council to tell us something, they would, which is quite different to saying that there was an automatic report.
We asked to bring the report on pink papers if that was needed. That was accepted, and if you look at the video, we were going to get a report in the next meeting. Now that was 3 months ago. We haven't had a meeting since. So I'm asking the urgent business to have that report in front of us because obviously something's going on. So we can scrutinise what the hell's going on with the major investment in this county that we'll see in Monoday.
I will ask for a paper to come. The paper might be one paragraph saying something we can tell you, but there will be something on the agenda. And if it's on pink papers, it's on pink papers. But we'll discuss that with the administration. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Right. Well, thank you very much for that, and I'll leave it to go.